there. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Christopher Nolikin.
I'm Lindsay Rinzulo, and today we have a special guest we're pretty excited about.
Yeah, we like our special guests. So we have Mike Corcoran, Dr. Mike Corcoran, who is an exotics veterinarian, specifically a reptile and amphibian practitioner, and also certified aquatic veterinarian. And so we're going to talk a lot about exotics today.
Yeah, because he's our first exotics doctor that we've had at practice, so we're pretty excited, and I think a lot of our clients are pretty excited too. So we thought you could just start talking a little bit about yourself, give us a background.
All right. So I graduated vet school from Washington State in 2008. I've moved around a little bit to get here. So I started out in Portland. I lived in Arizona, worked in an exotics-only practice there, and ended up moving up to the Boston area for some jobs. I have done exotics only for 8 of the 10 years that I've been out now, and are specialty boarded in reptile and amphibian medicine.
And what made you go with reptile? You know, we can talk a little bit about the different board certifications for exotics, so owners maybe can, I suppose, seek the right one.
Right.
But tell us about that.
Yeah, so briefly, there's like 2 groups that do specializations in exotics. One is the zoo veterinarians, and you basically take your initial exam on everything from aardvarks to zebras, and then day 2 you specialize in companion exotics. And then there is also a board of practitioners that breaks it down into either avian or companion mammals or reptile and amphibian. And basically you can get certified in all 3, but generally people start on one. And most people that have one are equally experienced in all of them. I picked reptile and amphibian primarily because that's where most of my experience was. When I was in Arizona, about 50% of our caseload at that hospital was reptile and amphibian. And also I kind of nerd out on their unique physiology. It's so different from anything else, and the medicine is so different from the other species that I kind of nerd out on it, and I enjoyed getting more in depth into those animals for the start.
So that's probably the answer to the question of why did you decide to switch from basically the kind of conventional dog and cat medicine, or was that really what you did? Did you do some large animal?
So originally out of school, my first job was emergency medicine, and at that hospital, part of what I wanted to do was bring in the exotics program to that, and ended up branching off. Basically, a lot of the other doctors there ended up not being very comfortable with them, so I ended up forming my own business, and I'm a horrible business person, so I failed at that, and that's how I ended up in Arizona.
So it's kind of like the exotics as a group were always something that interested you right from the very beginning. And
yes.
And it's interesting, too, because in vet school, I would say the primary focus is either companion animal medicine or large animal medicine, but we get not a lot of information on exotic species, even though there are some particular classes dedicated to that. So did you always know, like even through vet school, that you were thinking about exotics?
To some degree.
Yeah.
So in this area, actually, interestingly, Jennifer Graham is the exotics person at Tufts University. She used to be on the West Coast, and I was a technician where she worked.
Oh, wow.
And I did overnights in the ER as a technician, and I was like the one who was enthusiastic about taking care of her patients overnight. So she got me kind of hooked on it, and I went from there and followed through. Our school, basically, in vet school, you learn dog, cat, horse, cow.
Yeah.
That's
we
true.
had very little
electives and things like that, but
we had a few electives, nothing really substantial. So you really had to kind of branch out and make your own thing with 4th year rotations and with the summers and places you went there.
And I think that's what makes you so special too, having an exotic specialist, because we do have a lot of clients in the area that have exotic pets that need veterinary care, and even though all of us are licensed to practice veterinary medicine, the area of expertise that we have on those species might not, or is not, as
definitely not.
It definitely is not as well versed as yours, just by given all the board certification that you've done and practicing that you've done. So it is really hard because we don't get that much in school.
Yeah, so let's I guess highlight what those species are. So
Yeah.
what do you see? It's like everything.
Yeah, like
Well,
what
so
are,
again,
what are
the
some of your
three-
big clientele?
Yeah, so the big categories are reptile and amphibian. So everything there, all the lizards and snakes and turtles and tortoises,
Frogs.
all the scaly things, all the frogs and salamanders and axolotls and those cool things.
Axolotl. I'm gonna have to
Oh,
I don't even know how to
axolotls
spell
are
that.
they're a salamander species
Yeah.
native to Mexico.
Oh, I think I
and
have.
they never mature. They say they always
Do they
stay in
begin
that,
with an
that
X?
thing with the
They have little
the
frills
little
around, right?
gills.
The little
Yeah,
frills.
Do you know
the
what's
little
so funny? I actually went to the aquarium yesterday, and there were some axolotls in a little aquarium tank that were being brought from their vet. I don't know, like it was so weird. I don't know. They said, "Oh, they just had a vet checkup," and you could just tell there was some like extra scaling on one of their heads. So I wondered if they had some sort of infectious thing. Anyway, I didn't get into
They
it.
outsourced their reptile stuff now that Dr. Corcoran is.
They did. They had it in a bucket, bringing it out. So somewhere it was pretty interesting.
cool.
Yeah.
So then there's also the mammals and exotic mammals. I think mainly like most of them are bunnies and are guinea pigs and ferrets and rats, hamsters, gerbils, potbelly pigs. Let's see, goats.
You saw goats, yeah.
I see goats, and I think here we could probably get away with seeing an alpaca. I don't think anything bigger than that will fit in our cage space well
I don't
enough
know if an
to do
alpaca
things.
would
So.
fit. You can try.
In the dog run, I
runs.
think
Yeah,
we
in the dog
could.
runs,
A
yeah.
llama, I don't think we could,
I
but an
can't
alpaca
wait.
we could. But,
Bring an alpaca, please, someone.
so,
That would be
but
fun.
goats, I've seen a goat here now, and I would love to see more goats. So if you have goats, feel free. So yeah, that's our mammals, and then of course birds, and we've got chickens, ducks, macaws, parrots, cockatoos, cockatiels,
Yeah, I think it's basically
and fish.
And fish.
Oh,
How
yes,
can I
the
forget
fish? Yeah.
fish? So I also have a lot of have some good experience with aquatics, and I like treating the fish and the.
Now, in all these species, do any of these guys sort of need like routine care that you recommend? Yes, bring these patients in on a regular basis to come see you.
Definitely, and I think that's one of the harder things with this is a lot of what we see with exotics is just sick that day, and they're not brought in for routine care, and I think a lot of that has to do with the availability of doctors who see them and are comfortable with them, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that like when our dogs and cats come in, there are vaccines every year and there are fecal tests and things that are routinely recommended, and that makes it easy to come in, where exotic pets, a lot of times it's just the annual exam.
Right.
But if you think about it, humans have an 80 to 90 year lifespan, and we still at 30 years old should come in every year and get an exam. Our dogs and cats have a 15 to 20 year lifespan, and we recommend annual exams.
Right.
Rat only has a 2 or 3 year lifespan, so everything happens a lot faster. So I'd say most exotics should have at least annual exams.
Yeah.
Some of them every 6 months would be better.
And you could probably pick up some things that you could help prevent future illness or disease, dietary changes, things of that nature. I'm assuming at those annual exams, it's not just sort of a once over. You could actually really assess and be able to prevent, hopefully, future issues.
Yeah, and catching things early is the best chance of getting things done.
Yep.
So,
I think that's the thing that we miss a lot in the exotics is that whole idea of am I caring for this pet properly? Maybe you could speak to we classify it as husbandry. So, in people, we have a host of different diseases that we effectively bring on ourselves through different choices that we make in our lives, right? And that's the same in dogs and cats to some extent, but very significantly, especially reptiles.
Right.
Yeah. So it is a lot more complicated taking care of them. A dog and cat, not to oversimplify, but a dog and cat, when we talk about husbandry, a lot of it is, talking about diets, and we have a lot of information about like what the grain-free diets can do good and bad, and those kinds of things in the raw diet, and all of those things that we need to talk about. But for the most part, like, I put a coat on my dog when it's really cold out. Because she is a wimp. She's from Belize, and is used to the beach life.
Tropical.
But she can regulate her own temperature. Even if she goes out and it's 35, she can keep her own temperature at 100 to 102.5. And birds, on the other hand, regulate their own body temperature, but they are evolved. A lot of the macaws are evolved into an environment that has a much more stable temperature, and so they don't have the same abilities to maintain it in extremely cold temperatures. And then when we get into reptiles and amphibians, they are dependent upon the outside world, and if the temperature is not right, if the humidity in the environment is not right, if the furnishings are not right, we don't get the natural behaviors. So if they are meant to dig, in the environment and they don't have digging substrate, if they are arboreal or like tree-dwelling species and they don't have things to climb on, that creates stress and affects their immune system. So a lot of things have to be right, not only diet, but temperature and humidity and the amount of space and the proper substrate, the proper light cycle. So how many hours of light, how many hours of dark, how that changes seasonally.
Yeah.
All of those things affect their health. And if those are not right, then we get health problems from it.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the biggest heartbreak is if someone brings in a 1-year-old chameleon or 10-month-old chameleon and they've had it since it was maybe a baby, but they weren't doing anything appropriately. Like, you can't necessarily get that time back. Whereas if they had brought it when they first got it, get set up right.
Make sure that all of their terrarium, everything's all set the way that it needs to be there.
And the food, the food is massively important. And behaviors. We think of that in our cats, behavioral enrichment, that kind of thing. Yeah. That's just as true for
and behavioral enrichment is absolutely important for these guys. I mean, again, they're in a cage a lot more than our dogs and cats typically are, and they need enrichment the same. Like that, there are some great resources on enrichment of reptiles in captivity, and that's been a really big up and coming thing in the zoo world. And I think it's just as important for our pets. So
I think there's that misconception that they're easier than a dog because you don't have to take them out 3 times a day.
They're in a cage,
because they're actually in a cage. But there's a lot more that goes into making sure that pet is happy and healthy. Not just that it's easier.
I'll tell you what, I have guinea pigs. And those guinea pigs are way more work because they're bugging me for food and they squeak and then you have to clean their cage out.
But
and
it's so cute when they squeak.
They're adorable, but I go to the refrigerator and they squeak for their veggies, every single day.
Right.
One of my cats does not bug me. Yeah. The other one does.
Well, I feel like for that, even for an exotic, species like a guinea pig, which is sort of a mainstream exotic pet that a lot
you don't think of it as being exotic.
You don't think of it as that they do need a certain amount of veggies. You have to be careful. You can't just put in pellets and they're done. You have to be able to give them fresh veggies and things of that nature. And I think I watched Dr. Van Allen's guinea pigs for a week, which was wonderful.
She did not kill them.
I did not.
She did not replace them with another pig.
Extremely stressed out about it, that if I ever did this. And I did guinea pig research to make sure I knew what I was going to be doing. But those guinea pigs, I was very, making sure that they have the appropriate diet and the environment's right and their cage is clean is important.
Well, another thing about their routine care too is when we switch over to things like rabbits and guinea pigs now, like in the wild, these are prey animals. Yeah. So when they get sick, they don't show it. Like when my dog gets sick, oh my God, there's like whining and crying.
I know, they're very dramatic.
Yes. Like, oh.
She needs a jacket to go outside.
Yeah. When a guinea pig or a rabbit are a prey animal, and a lot of the birds and a lot of the reptiles, they're a lot closer to wild animals than our dogs and cats. And they have a lot more of these instincts, and part of the instincts of a prey animal is to hide anytime they're sick so that they are not the one that's picked out by the predator. Yep. So they tend to get a lot more sick before the average person is going to notice things.
And I think that's also
getting their teeth looked at and getting a good dental exam, getting a good palpation of their body cavities and their abdomen, a good listen to heart and lungs. You can catch things a lot easier and definitely a lot more early with exotic animals.
And I'll attest to that. One of my piggies got pneumonia, and I did, even being a veterinarian, I did not notice it until she was in pretty significant distress, and we got her over it.
Oh, wow. One of the ones you have now?
Yeah. Oh. Little Charlotte.
Yeah,
that's one of the first patients I saw here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say...
I didn't get her over it. He helped me.
Well, yeah. Thankfully he was here.
Yeah.
Is that because those exotic pets, so because they do hide their illness, when we do see them, they are a lot... I think that sometimes owners think, it should be really easy because it's,
a hamster.
A hamster, shouldn't you just be able to give it some medicine? And the fact is that they actually could be a lot sicker than we really know at that time. Yeah, it's true.
I think that the financial part probably plays into it a little bit. Sometimes these are really well thought out pets, right? So someone who has purchased a macaw, that's a big investment. But a lot of the times, people get a hamster for their kids. Right. They don't necessarily think that this, $6 or $8 hamster is going to end up costing them anything in veterinary care. But if they do want that pet to be with the kids for a long time, the kids get attached to it, I think the veterinary care is well worth investing in.
And then we were talking about vaccines for our dogs and cats. Do you have any patients that you routinely are vaccinated? Do any of these exotic species get vaccinated?
Not often, but ferrets do. So ferrets, in the state of Massachusetts, legally have to be rabies vaccinated, and it's also good for their health.
Good practice. Yeah.
And that's an annual vaccine for them, and they get a distemper vaccine, so the canine distemper. But I would definitely recommend, there's one that is specifically created for ferrets that has a much lower rate of vaccine reactions and that kind of thing. And distemper, if they get distemper, which they can get from a dog exposure, from anything else, it's almost always fatal in ferrets. So they get vaccines. And then our potbelly pigs get annual vaccines too, about 3 or 4 different vaccines depending on their lifestyle and where they end up.
But just like we say in dogs and cats, that's not the reason you're bringing them in.
Right.
We fortunately sort of get the dogs and cats to come in a little, I think, more regularly than we might otherwise have because of the vaccines. But more of what I'm doing is examining your animal and checking them out for problems.
Right. Yeah.
So what else? So you always get the obligatory question: what's the craziest
What
thing you've ever
everybody
seen?
wants to know.
What have you seen that's crazy?
He sees all the crazy things. What's the craziest?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've seen so many of them at this point. It's kind of like it's a little bit normalized for me. Kind of like the surgeon doesn't think it's a big deal when they go into a chest, right? But that would freak out everyone else. So I try and think of like, okay, if I was not this, what would be the weirdest thing? And I would say, like, pet-wise, when I was in Arizona, somebody brought a pet wallaby to me.
Wallaby.
And I thought that was awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that's
They can
that's
have
a really
them out
unique
there,
one. Yeah. They can have them out there, and this one was like lived outdoors most of the year, had an indoor enclosure to escape the god awful heat.
Yeah.
I think some of the aquatics are also shocking to our team when you bring like
You took like an X-ray on a fish the other day,
or an eel,
Yeah.
or
I've had-
which
like
was super cool.
so those
have
are
koi come in,
Yeah.
and I have done pond calls for koi,
Yeah.
so visits to koi ponds. I've seen some freshwater stingrays in
That's awesome.
private practice that were pets.
Yeah, that's the thing also that I think people do not even consider veterinary care for their aquatics, right? So I've got 2 fish tanks, and you can't just bring the whole tank in, but you can do water quality testing.
Yeah.
You can evaluate, the tanks. You can go to houses to look at their setups, or see an individual fish that someone brings in. And these fish live a long time. I have a angelfish that's 8 years old.
Wow, yeah.
And I've done CT on fish, CT exams. I've done ultrasounds. I've done, we can do injectable medications. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of over-the-counter medications that can be bought, and most of them are not very effective. Some of them are not even safe, I would argue, but there's a good loophole for
There's
those.
a lot of self-diagnosis in that. People just search on the internet for like white spots on my fish and try to match it up, and then they go to the store and buy the thing, and not always that great.
And what about a pet that are there any exotic pets that you will not see?
Not very many. I've even so when I was in my private practice, my mobile private practice in Oregon, I even worked with a large cat sanctuary and saw cougars.
That's so cool. Yeah.
So there are venomous reptiles I will see, but it's very special kind of things. Number one, I want to be sure they're permitted properly. It's not impossible, but to get permits for them, but I need to arrange who is going to handle it, because we don't have staff here trained in handling them, and if I can't handle and examine always at the same time, so need to make special arrangements, and it's not frequent. And then non-human primates, there are some I won't, like I'm not going to see generally I'm not going to see a chimpanzee or something like that could physically tear my head off. Or,
good policy.
Yeah.
King Kong. Let's avoid King Kong.
Yeah.
None of that.
All right.
That's
Is
very
there anything
exciting.
else that you want to say before we move to our next segment?
We're
we have a
really
question?
excited. Oh, we do have a question.
By an exotic.
Oh,
Have
that's
you-
a good question.
Have I ever been bit by? Oh, definitely. Yes. As a matter of fact, the funniest story I have with that, there was a 5.5-foot red-tailed boa that I saw in practice once for being ill, and even though they're really large snakes, generally they have the best temperament, and they're really docile animals. So I didn't think anything of reaching in to get it out for its exam. Only this one had neurologic disease. It was not, it ultimately, unfortunately, didn't make it because of a neurologic condition that we couldn't help. It had advanced too far, but it was in its feeding container and had neurologic disease, and with that combination, it struck and grabbed me by the wrist and wrapped and started constricting my arm and said, I'll be back. So,
One moment, please.
quietly stepped out of the room, went to the treatment area, and it took actually like 3 people to help unwrap the snake.
Yeah, that's true.
And then their teeth angle inwards, so we had to kind of manipulate that off. And when it finally came off, my biggest regret of the whole thing was like, why did I not get video of that?
Yeah.
Like so many people are afraid of snakes, and didn't occur to me until I got it off. They were tiny, barely broke the skin.
Mm-hmm.
There were tiny little dabs of blood, and that's all it really did to me. And I'm like, if anybody could see this 6-foot snake, how
Lauren's
good
on
of a
the
thing
floor,
it
right?
grabbed
Lauren
and
is
like
on the floor. Our producer,
wrapped around
director,
and all that. And ultimately, all it did was like significantly less than
she's
a cat
gonna pass
would do.
out. She
Did it
might
hurt as it was happening though, or no?
No, it didn't.
Not even
It
really.
didn't even hurt. But like the squeezing hurt worse than the teeth. To be
Wow.
honest, like the teeth are so small, and so I'm like, you don't really have a reason to be afraid of these
Right.
things. If they're venomous, yes,
Yeah.
be afraid of a cobra.
Yes.
But
For our public, if you ever ask a veterinarian, have you been bitten by X? The answer is yes.
yes,
It happens.
Yes.
It happens.
I've actually even been bitten by a guinea pig too, and I
Yeah.
didn't think that would ever happen because
Yeah.
they're so
They're
nice.
so
So
sweet.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hamsters always.
Oh,
Ferrets.
hamsters are tough. Yeah, they always will get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining
We're
us.
very happy
Thank
that
you
you're
for
part of the
having me.
Bulger team.
So
And,
schedule your exotic species with Dr. Corcoran.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and change now over to talking about our DNA tests, which I think people have been eagerly awaiting. We have all the genetic tests are in, and they're very interesting. So Lindsay has not seen the results.
I haven't. I sort of feel as though this was going to be like a nice surprise, and I wanted to be a
Yeah.
part of the audience,
Right.
feeling surprised.
And I
with the
sort of
results
wanted
as
to
well.
kind of know a little so I could guide the conversation. So that's the way we're playing this. Hopefully you like that.
So we sort of like, this is, our producers have
at
gotten these wonderful envelopes.
Beautiful envelopes. It's like the
Turn it
Academy
around.
Awards.
They even have a little like seal.
like a
Oh, it's
little-
fantastic.
Okay, so just to recap what we did, we had 4 dogs that we did 2 genetic tests each to try to compare different companies and ways that you can get the DNA testing done. So we had Lola first, who's Lindsay's little.
Who's my dog? Who is actually is supposed to be a pure breed dog.
So we were curious, is she really a purebred? But also to use her as a control and make sure that those tests did come back. In fact, yes, she is.
But that being said, a lot of people, I don't know if you saw some of the guesses that people had. Some people had some interesting guesses online, which I thought were great.
So people didn't know that she was a purebred dog, right before.
And sometimes I could actually see them, like some of the guesses that they had.
So what were some of them?
Well, like some of them like said not just a Yorkie, but they had like a Silky in there.
Silky,
and I could see
yeah.
because her
I can't tell the
hairs.
difference, truthfully.
The
I know
noses
there's
are
a
a little
thing.
longer
Yeah.
and thinner, but I mean, I could see it. So I mean, I think some of the guesses there were pretty good, and even just for all of the dogs, I have to say, I think the audience did a pretty good job with some
Picking
of the guesses.
out some of the guesses.
It was
So why don't we
interesting.
open up Lola? Here, I'll hand this to you. This
My
is
little
Lola.
Lola.
So while she's opening that, I'm also going to say we did the Royal Canin genetic test. Oh, we have to show the pictures. This is Lola.
See, she does look like a hot mess.
Right. We did Royal Canin, which is a blood test, and you have to do that at your veterinarian. And then we chose a commercial test that anyone could purchase online, which for her was the Wisdom Panel. Ultimately, those 2 are actually the same lab. It's just one is that you can buy it online and do just a cheek swab, and the other one you can do blood tests. So they should come out the same. I will say we had a little bit of trouble, truthfully, with the Wisdom Panel in that they have a very weird and kind of hard login process. They make you create an account, log in, and have it activated, and I can't get the results, and it's annoying me. So we only have for her the Royal Canin results. They should be the same. Hers
Did
Tell
come
us.
back as a Yorkshire Terrier. So
all little Yorkie pictures.
This is actually very interesting. So, I mean, I'm quite surprised. I actually thought maybe because she was brought into our family through my brother-in-law, and not saying that my brother-in-law would not do a good job getting a purebred dog.
Is he watching?
Probably.
Okay. Good.
But I could see like her being sort of a mixed breed.
A little
of
under
sorts.
the table,
Under the
purebred.
table, purebred dog. And now she sort of goes between all the houses, my house, my parents' house, everything like that. But she did come back as a Yorkie. And it's sort of interesting if you look at this analysis summary from Royal Canin, which I kind of like how they do, and I'm going to be interested to see how the other dogs look. She literally just has Yorkies everywhere.
They break it down
Just
by
Yorkies everywhere.
parents, grandparents, and then further out than that.
Yeah.
Now, flip to the next pages. So they also provide you with other genetic health testing, which I think is great.
I thought
So
this
I'm going
was
to hold something
great.
for
Yeah,
you.
actually, we'll hold the picture a little up so we can...
I'll hold this.
Yeah, so this was sort of the MDR1 genetic screening I thought was pretty good, and especially for certain breeds of dogs that might be more susceptible to this. This might be actually sort of interesting, like for herding breeds that might be more predisposed to it. It might be interesting if you think that your dog might be mixed with one of those, or if it is a purebred of one of those, or you think it's a purebred, it'd be nice to actually get a testing next that sort of does that screening. Which
So that's a drug sensitivity, basically.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole host of other genetic tests that they did, which she came back negative for.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, when you look at what the cost for those individual tests would be, it's actually quite a lot. I mean, even just the MDR testing would be more than this would be.
They do von Willebrands
Yeah.
for like clotting issues. They have primary lens luxation, which I thought was crazy. Like whether or not that lens was going to be predisposed to luxating in the eye. DM or degenerative myelopathy. I mean, really some important diseases. It'd be nice to have a heads up if your dog is testing positive for any of this. Then I thought this was pretty cool too. They even gave your like sort of an estimated weight for the dog, ideal weight, and they
kind of like their average lifespan.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing that even for a purebred, you could actually see the value in. You have a purebred collie who's known for having the MDR or other genetic, concerns. You're getting actually a fairly good value for that.
Yeah.
So that's Lola.
And do we know, like, actually, I should have probably found out before we went on air, like, the sensitivity on these. Like, is it a pretty good...
I don't think they give you the number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
So then, next, we have Lucca. Lucca's so majestic. Look at this beautiful picture.
That's actually a gorgeous picture.
Mountains in the background.
Where is that? Is that in, like... Mount Washington. Okay,
He
it's
climbs
beautiful.
Mount Washington. He's very
focused.
athletic.
He's angelic.
Yes.
All right, let's open up.
So we have Lucca. So you want me to open Lucca?
Yeah, let's open up. I'm really
Lucca,
excited
we
to see.
did. Let's see the wisdom panel and the Royal Canin, and they were pretty much identical, I think, which you'd expect because it's the same lab, but different methods of collection. So you could get some differences there. So the thing about Lucca is that we know some of his parentage, and we're pretty sure about it. So we know that his dad was a German wire-haired pointer. Sorry, I almost said short hair. German wire-haired pointer, which you can see in there if you Google German wire-haired pointer. There were even one or two people that guessed that. And then the other half we know is an Airedale mix. We don't know what the mix part was. We know Airedale Terrier. And we're, pretty confident of those things. What we got for him was that one parent was a Labrador Retriever Cocker Spaniel mix.
Oh, interesting.
And the other side is an American Staffordshire Terrier Boxer mix.
What? Really?
So,
wow.
The thing you'll find with these mixed breeds is you'll often get, if you look at this, I'm not sure if you can really see it. We can probably put some scanned copies in our posts. You'll get sometimes mixed breed as part of the lineage.
Yeah.
So, like for the parents, the one side, it says Lab, Cocker Spaniel, and mixed breed. Mixed breed means it's so mixed that they can't sort of sort it out, which gets a little bit tricky and sometimes a little unrewarding feeling.
Yeah.
None of those are the known breeds that we know him to have.
That's so interesting.
So, and the wisdom panel was the same, but the wisdom panel just gave you a breakdown kind of percentages, and then ultimately did say kind of the same thing. Like the one parent was 50% lab, 25% Cocker Spaniel, and then 25% we don't really know. And then the other side with the Amstaff and the Boxer. So like,
and no wire-haired terrier of any sort in there. That's crazy because he has
so are they picking up terrier with the Amstaff, but they don't know they're picking a specific breed? I don't know.
But it's also quite interesting that they were very similar. Like that's quite interesting.
Well, but for this, they're maybe not as interesting because they are the same lab.
Yeah.
Running the test, right? So they're using the same database of DNA.
Yeah.
Now, other things that we found out on the Royal Canin analysis, we found out that he is also normal for the MDR, so he doesn't have that mutation, but that he does have one copy, so it's a recessive trait, but he's von Willebrand's disease. One copy, which means it's not a trait that you have to worry about, but you might not want to breed him. Now, that's interesting because the German wire-haired terriers, I learned this morning, are prone to that.
Yeah.
But yet that didn't come up on his genetic tests at all. So, and he was negative for everything else. So, he's a little more of a question. Now, some of the things that they tell you about the expected size and traits of the way that he looks, they actually were pretty right on. Like eyebrows. They said he would have like prominent eyebrows. And I think something around his nose or mask or something.
And just to clarify, you did not, when we submitted these tests to the lab, we did not have to submit a picture along with it.
No picture.
Nor a description of the way
And the
the
two
dog
tests,
looked,
we
correct?
sent them under different names, not to deceive the lab or make it a big hush-hush thing, but just so that they didn't say, oh, these two are the same dog. Yeah. The wisdom panel, you don't get as much of the detail in terms of the genetic testing. So you got like that he came up at risk or carrier for nothing. So interestingly, they did not find the von Willebrand's thing. I don't know if they even tested for it. And that he was clear for 152 things. But they don't enumerate them or list them out. Exactly. And then that his ideal weight is 46 to 75 pounds. Like a massive range.
Quite a range.
Yeah. So that's what we get. So, I felt like the results from the wisdom panel were the same at least, but not maybe as
detailed.
Yeah.
I think that I like the Royal Canin though.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Wow.
Okay.
Interesting for
All right.
results.
So then let's move to the next. Who's our next?
It's Callie.
It's Callie.
Our other producer. Let's take a peek.
So Callie. Closer, like that. All right, Callie's our little brindly. What does she weigh? 40 pounds? About 40 pounds. She came from Tennessee.
We had some good guesses on her too.
Yeah.
All right. So
a lot of people guessed what I guessed, but it didn't turn out to be right.
She came out as a Great Pyrenees, Australian Shepherd, Border Collie, and Lab mix. Very interesting.
Now that's on the Royal Canin one.
That's on the Royal Canin. Yep. To clarify. Oops, sorry. I'm gonna hold up a picture of Callie. You want to read over the results?
You need to hold the picture up,
I'll hold her up.
or the test.
The test you want
Yeah.
to just show.
Oh, sure.
So we'll show that. Yeah. So, she had kind of mixed lineage. And you can kind of see those little dog biscuit things. Those are the ones where they're not really sure, and they kind of say miscellaneous mixed breed. So her tests, so we have Great Pyrenees and Australian Shepherd mix is theoretically her parent, one parent, and the other parent, Border Collie Lab mix. I mean, I could see that.
I could see that too. Is that sort of what you thought as well?
No, we all thought Greyhound. Like a lot of us thought Greyhound.
I didn't know. Yeah.
Collie.
Yeah.
We got Border Collie, so maybe.
The Collie.
We have normal and negative for the MDR1 and for everything else that they tested for. And then, so she is a dog that we did the Embark test, which is a completely different company, and they are out of Cornell. So they're doing the cheek swab that you can buy on wherever, Amazon.
That's interesting.
So hers were similar. But one interesting thing is she came up 21.7% mountain cur.
That's a big percentage that they didn't pick up on the Royal Canin.
But are they picking up mixed breed and they don't test for mountain cur? Because it's not really...
Possibly. It's not really.
Right,
Yeah.
it's not really a breed.
But she also came up as a super mutt.
And 12.5% super mutt.
Super mutt. I
like
that.
I really like that. She's also, on this, we get wolfiness.
Where is
So
this?
we get, she's 1.2% wolfy. I don't actually know what that means.
What does that even mean?
Does it mean that it's
that she's like
very
more
wolfy?
closely
So
related to the wolf?
here's her, the way you get these results. We'll put those. You do get a little family tree too, right?
Oh yeah.
So mountain cur. Now Tennessee, like mountain cur. Mountain cur is kind of a group of dogs. The last time I looked this up, they're dogs that share similar characteristics and are also, I would call them almost like a super mutt.
I do not think they are AKC certified.
They are not.
Okay. Yeah.
But they all, kind of breed true to some extent where they all, like the parents and the babies look
They
the
all have
same.
a very
and
similar look to them. Yeah.
So we have,
I
again...
wouldn't point her, though, with a mountain cur when I just look at this picture.
I think the brindly stuff. I think that's where we're getting the brindle. Yeah, we wanted to be greyhound brindle,
she's
but
so thin and sleek.
You can all Google that and find pictures of mountain curs.
Yeah.
They did predict her adult weight would be 40 pounds. Right on.
Yeah.
Her genetic age currently is 19 human years.
Oh, they even give her a current age. I kind of like that. That's nice.
And then they gave us a whole bunch of chromosome pictures. It's just very pretty. I don't know that it's
Well, and just to
Is
go
it
back
useful?
on that age, because I feel like a lot of people have that misconception that 1 year,
1 year
of
to
life
7
is 7
years.
years, but it's actually not necessarily true. This is sort of going off on a segue,
Yeah.
but because depending on the breed of dog that your dog is, certain breeds that are smaller, they tend to live a little bit longer than the giant breeds, and so that doesn't always sort of correlate with every single type of dog.
Now they give us also this little map like you get when you do your ancestry DNA or your
This is
23andMe.
super cool. I like that.
And they say where your dog originated from and then migrated to. So it's like the middle of Asia out to Europe and then, we don't know. Then eventually making their way to United States. There's no other arrows here. And then this one I don't even know what to do with.
Well, let's
There's
see
all
what this
kinds
is.
of
Coat color.
coat color,
Ooh.
body size, and they've got all kinds of abbreviations that they don't really explain. So that might be a little tricky to interpret. I don't.
Yeah, like the hind declaw CT. I don't even know what that means.
Well, because the Great Pyrenees have the hind declaw,
CT,
but she doesn't
what-
have that.
what
I don't know what a
CT
CT is.
means. Yeah.
Right. So,
okay.
I mean, they don't necessarily. I think that's the tricky part is figuring out how to interpret some of this. I'm not sure they provided us with enough details to be able to do that. It's possible if you go log on, you can
Find
click on the
keys
information.
to actually figure out what they're talking about. Yeah.
So then you give us clinical traits. Interestingly, for Callie, it says that she might be prone to having a low ALT, which is a liver value, which I don't care if it's low. It doesn't. We never really
bother
worry about
us.
that. But and then she also came up clear for all of the genetic traits they looked for and not a risk or carrier of any of them. So this one was interesting because I feel like, I mean, this was a little more expensive than the Wisdom Panel. It was like $180.
Yep.
But you got almost the same level of information as you got with the Royal Canin one. The Royal Canin one, it depends on what your vet
Yep.
charges, but it's going to be in that same general ballpark, $200 or so. So this is one, I don't have a problem with either the Wisdom or the Embark, but it just seemed like I liked the Embark's presentation
Yeah.
and information seemed very complete. And I'm not reviewing it. I'm just kind of... Also, when you logged in, you didn't have to log in. You just could click on a link and get your information. FYI. Nice.
That's nice.
Much better. Because I forget my passwords.
As we all do.
We all forget our passwords. I created
this
a
gonna
very
be the-
clever password. I'm just telling
That's
you.
not the key, no. That's
No,
not
these
the
are just the list of all the things they
Yeah.
tested for. So again, they may be providing you with a little information overload, but they do provide you with all that.
Well, that's
so
very good.
that's Callie.
Oh, Miss Callie. Let's put this all together. We'll keep
Put
these
this
ones
together with this,
Yes,
and then
Callies.
Embark, you can also find their relatives online.
okay.
Oh,
So if
we
other
just-
people have done
We just were informed
genetic
in
testing,
studio that with Embark you can actually find relatives just like
So
in
it's
Ancestry
like
online.
Ancestry?
So if somebody
so
else
if somebody else has run it and it's like a sibling,
That's
they'll
kinda
they'll
cool.
say this is a sibling. Go call them.
Kept up to date with notifications.
and
Oh.
it'll actually keep the owner or keep you if you've done the test up to date with notifications if somebody else does the test.
Yeah.
You keep it all with Callie stuff.
That's Callie.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So then our last little girl, is Tallulah, who really just looks like an American brown dog. She's, who knows what she is. We were very excited to see hers. So Royal Canin came up with, she is one parent, is Collie Havanese Toy Fox Terrier
Interesting.
and otherwise miscellaneous mixed breed. And the other parent is Chow, Lab, and other mixed breed.
I can see the Chow Lab too. Can't you
The
see
Chow
the
came
Lab?
pretty consistently through.
Yeah, some people were right.
So here's her, her little lineage here, similar to the others. She came up negative for MDR, but she actually came up as a carrier for degenerative myelopathy, which it's a recessive trait. So carrier means she's well and she's not likely to develop that disease. But, we might want to reconsider breeding her if she were not already spayed, or a mixed breed dog that wouldn't produce puppies that people would seek out.
Yeah.
I would seek them out because she's adorable.
She is actually really cute. She's super cute.
Predicted that her adult weight was 19 to 33 pounds, which is pretty right on. I
Yeah.
think she's like 20
Yeah.
or 24.
I think we were talking about trying to lose a little bit, maybe get down.
Maybe
close to
she's
that
a little
19
bit,
ideal
a
weight.
little closer to the 19.
Sorry, Christine.
She's watching, I know.
Does Christine know the results already? Did
Yeah,
you sneak a peek?
we
Yeah.
sent them
Yeah,
to her.
good test.
So on the other one, the Embark test, she was the other one that we did embark upon. Embark upon? Hers also produced in the same kind of fashion here. She very similar. Also the rat terrier. Oh no, potentially
Are they
very different. So hers, you hold that one and we'll see here. So she came back with a parent being a rat terrier mixed and a parent being a Chihuahua Collie Chow mix. So they kind of resorted the different things, because legitimately I don't actually know how they know one parent versus another, except maybe mitochondrial DNA or something
from the mother.
But so rat terrier instead of toy fox terrier. Okay, right? They're pretty.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're genetically similar, but apparently they are. We got a lab in there, so we got that, and we got an American bulldog mix on one side.
Yep.
Which is not
on here.
Not on the Royal Canin one. And then on the other side we got Chihuahua, which we didn't get here, but I could definitely see some Chihuahua in her. She's just bigger.
Yep.
Collie mix, which we also got here. Chow is pretty consistent across.
Yep.
And then again, random American mix, super mutt.
Yeah, and I wonder if some of those, like the Chihuahuas, they're considering more of it's in the mixed breed.
Is it in the mixed breed? Yeah, so they might be just not pulling out. And so again, Embark gave us this fancy migration,
Look at her migration
map. So her lineage has been all over the world.
She's global.
Originating mostly in Europe and then traveling all over.
Wow.
I don't really know what that means. It's just where she came from. The same kind of like little indecipherable list of traits that we would have to find out what the keys are for that. She also got that low normal ALT thing. This test came back similarly that she's a carrier for the degenerative myelopathy, so that was consistent, and everything else she was clear for. So, I think this was great.
I think that's pretty actually impressive, honestly. Like I know that there are some minor differences, but geez, that is.
I think the trouble that I have with it is that we had, two mixed breeds that we don't know, so we have no choice but to believe the results.
Yeah, the ones with Lucca is a little bit.
But then we got Lucca that
strange.
Didn't come back the way we kind of expected. Now, Lucca also had genetic testing done like 8 years ago. We don't know what the brand was of that testing. And 8 years ago is a long time in DNA technology. So, but his came back, again, kind of completely different that time. But I don't think can you tell me what those results were? That
he was a product of purebred lab and a purebred Jack Russell.
A purebred lab and a purebred Jack Russell, which
Interesting.
we got lab on all of them. So
Yep.
I think we could say that Airedale mix had some lab in there. Yeah. But I often wonder, so I did Lucy, my dog. My dog's a little 18-pound, like, she looks like a larger Havanese maybe, like a Shih Tzu. She's got a curly tail. And she's come back, I did the same test on her twice. Again, like 8 years apart. And she came back once, miniature poodle, and then like super mutt. And the super mutt, they were like, I don't know, maybe a Mastiff or a Cane Corso. Like, those are massive dogs.
Cane Corsos are huge.
And then like at the bottom is like, or maybe Westie,
Yeah.
Probably more likely West Highland White Terrier. And then the second time I got entirely different results from the same company, but they'd added DNA, material and information. So
it's super cool. I actually do, and I think that the embrace saying that they would
embark,
that they would keep in touch with owners that sort of are also putting in their results that might be siblings of your dog is kind of cool.
Unless your dog commits a crime. And then you should watch out because they will track you down.
Case.
Right? Cold case.
Canine
if your dog is a serial murderer, don't do genetic testing. So we did want to put it out there to everyone. DNA testing is not something that Bulger offers right now, but it is something we could offer. And let us know in the comments if you think that that's something that you would be interested in now that we've sort of done this. I think I would be more interested, less so much in the breed stuff, but more in all of that genetic information.
The genetic information is exciting. I mean, to have that information, depending on how sensitive those tests are and picking up it, if it's, fairly similar to, the lab tests that we send out for specific testing, if the, tests are good and accurate, then it would be great. It's great information.
And I can pretty wholeheartedly say that either of these two tests, the Wisdom or the Embark, are probably very reasonable for you to think about, purchasing on your own and doing the testing. Yeah. You have to follow the instructions. So they say don't feed the animal within like a half an hour of the test so that the DNA material from the food doesn't affect the results.
Interesting,
yeah. And the tricky part too is like, it's a little hard sometimes for vets, to balance their time. I think like if you come and schedule an appointment and bring this ream of paper without us being able to access, like there's that list of genetic traits. I don't know what those things mean. And so it's harder for us to interpret outside lab work than
Yep.
it is. But for your own information, I think it's very useful. Or if you come saying, my dog has von Willebrand's, what do I do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to know. Oh, this is a fun episode. I
Yeah,
liked it. This was
very
good.
much.
I hope everybody else enjoyed it. Remember, you can subscribe and review our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube.
You can also catch our episodes live at 11 a.m. on the second Wednesday of the month on the Belger Veterinary Hospital Facebook page.
Special thanks to our sponsor, Ethos Veterinary Health.
And see you next time. I'm Christopher Nolikin.
I'm Lindsay Renzullo. Thanks so much.